Well, the liberal media's sudden turnaround on Kamala Harris coverage is now being called out as teetering on propaganda. For reference, here's some of her coverage from her 2018 campaign and when she first took office. The New York Times, quote, how Kamala Harris's campaign unraveled. And there was Politico on her office, quote, not a healthy environment, and, quote, rife with dissent. And CNN added, quote, exasperation and dysfunction. That's when they were being honest. But even more recently, there were calls for President Biden to drop Harris as VP. Salon, New York Magazine, even Politico came out with these headlines. But now she's the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, and boy, did they do a heel turn. She's running against Donald Trump, so all the concern, all the questions vanish into this. Quote, the reintroduction of Kamala Harris. Look, the quotes in this are stunning. Harris, here's some of them. Matched for the moment, an overnight sensation, a political phenomenon, the swiftest vibe shift in modern political history. They're not even trying to hide it.
No, I mean, all of that is true, especially the overnight sensation part. and apparently we have a lot of overnight sleepovers for this one, because I think they're on like round 8 or 9. Something I shared with our viewers on The Focus yesterday was how many times they've tried to reinvent her in 23 days. I mean, we don't get a redo like that ever in life. So what is it that they don't want us to know about Kamala Harris? Is it that the scripts are not even edited by her that she reads on the stump, let alone written? Is it, and look, everybody's got speech writers, but since we can't get a sit down with her, that maybe she would be participating in writing the speeches would be helpful to know. All those off the record relationships that she's forming with legacy and liberal media now will come into play, so that once she does finally sit down, and I welcome people to look at this because this will feel like another reintroduction. Maybe it'll come with a cover, who knows? But then those reporters and journalists and writers will begin to write things like, well, we've always known that she told us this. All of that off the record then goes on the record, and it solidifies her rise. It's kind of a thing that happens in journalism. When you know you can't speak about something, you can triangulate it if you want, or you can wait for that subject to tell you it's on the record now. Watch for it.
Cheryl, you know, one of the interesting things about this is the line in the timepiece, the campaign denied a request for an interview for this story. So you don't even have to go out and interview to get this kind of coverage. It just comes to you.
Pretty amazing that you get the cover of magazine. You don't even have to talk to the magazine. But, you know, our good friend James Freeman over at the Wall Street Journal makes a really great point about all of this love affair with her, is it could really backfire, because it certainly backfired with them and Joe Biden. You know, they covered for him. They knew there were problems, that he wasn't with it. And then all of a sudden they all get exposed. And by the way, he says, well, friendly media doomed Democrats. All this congenial coverage of Harris could repeat the Biden mistakes. Mm-hmm. So think about it before you do the next glowy piece of Kamala Harris. But they also say the press failed, and it looks like they're going to fail again because she's going to have to do an interview.
Yeah,
Paul,
I don't
be out there.
Oprah will get involved. You'll see.
Paul, I do want to focus on Time Magazine and their track record. Yeah. So this is their assassination attempt cover. They first posted on X this assassination attempt cover of Donald Trump, the infamous fist in the air, where he said, fight, fight, fight. But as the Federalist points out, they didn't put it to print. After they got criticized for putting this image out, the actual image is on the other side. No picture of Donald Trump.
Yeah. Wow. So I think actually a perfect metaphor here would have been if Time Magazine published that Kamala Harris cover, but when you opened it, the interior, all the pages were blank. Right? Because that's realistically what you got here. And it is a little bit about Time Magazine. Why? Because who knew it even published still? All right. I didn't know that was still around. So they've decided to just completely dispense with any journalistic ethics here, just to try to get on the radar. Hey, we're still here. This is the equivalent of the kid in the back saying, hey, teacher, I am still here. You know, you haven't called on me in a while. They want us to pay attention to a magazine that nobody cares about anymore. And it's published, by the way, if you drill down, by a San Francisco activist. So you know exactly where they're coming from. The best thing to do with this is laugh at the cover and ignore it, because it's all going to be propaganda. And the proof of that is, imagine a right-leaning journalistic forum put out that kind of a cover for Donald Trump. The screams on the left about it being just, oh, it's like Goebbels. This is Soviet propaganda. They'd all melt down. It's embarrassingly obvious.
Yeah, and Time Magazine agreed they've fallen into irrelevancy, but they get a lot of traction and a lot of notice. And this is, again, let's do side by side, Emily, for you. You see Kamala Harris on one side, and on the other side, this is how they cover Donald Trump. You see him melting down. I mean, you can't deny the double standard.
No, and just to underscore, she didn't even sit for this interview. To me, it read like an influencer.
Not
Just
on the record anyway.
So sophomoric, and they were sort of painting what they expected, right? Let me just say the words, and then that will be reality. And included, by the way, a totally farcical civics lesson, because I love how they pointed out how she became the de facto nominee, which was simply because Joe Biden endorsed her. I mean, every thread in there was such a joke. And illegal, so demonstrably ridiculous. And I felt that my favorite point, I thought, besides the swiftest vibe shift, was when they talked about that while in the beginning they were unsure. In the past 2 weeks, Kamala has come out as the energetic fighter that her allies know her for. Energetic fighter? We haven't even seen her. That's the point. She has not taken a question from the media that you purport to represent. Where are the answers to our questions? Exactly.
Well,
I loved Glenn Greenwald's report when he said, look, somehow they tried to transform her from a national embarrassment to a transformative pioneer overnight. So to your guys' point, go ahead and shout it to the rooftops in San Francisco. But for the rest of us Americans, I'll take my reality with a cup of water.
Yeah, Time Magazine, well, they've been exposed. And remember who they had up for Time Person of the Year? It was the Trump prosecutors. They actually wanted to possibly give them an award.
Time, we know. You're still there. It's okay.
We see you, Time.
Oh, my goodness.
All right.